Hare Krishna, my dear devotees. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, right here in Hythe, Kent, southeast England, just next to the English Channel, where we've set up a little BBT enclave here. We're trying to put out the sounds, transcendental sounds, to purify this time-worn, agitated earth that is so bothered by quarrelsome natures. It's the Kali Yuga, it's advancing. Anyway, we will try to put out this sound as much as possible to try to quell the agitation for those who can hear. In order to hear clearly, our apparatus, this body and mind, have to be tuned properly. So let us take these instructions that are given to us in these holy scriptures into our hearts and into our character, into our daily lives. And that way, as our apparatus becomes tuned, it's like when you have a very high quality FM radio station and you're tuning it, it sounds static, but when you hit this exact frequency, it's clear as a bell. So it's like that. We're hearing these books from Srila Prabhupada, who is as fine-tuned as a person can become, and now we have to fine-tune our instruments, our body and minds, so that we can hear the transcendental sounds clearly. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Mahima Stotram by Srila Sanatana Goswami describes the subject we're talking about today, the glorification of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, the summum bonum, the ripened fruit of the Vedas. It goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Trikpada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Purāṇa Śrīmad-Bhāgavata Prabho Kali Dvandoditaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Shri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshak Shadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madgudo Man Mahadana Man Nishtadaka Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy. I bow down to you. Asadu sadhu tadayin atini chochata kada hanamuncha kadachin mam premna rit kantayokspurda. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we've reached the ninth chapter of the first canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, describing Bhīṣmadeva's instructing Yudhishthira on the duties of being a king. Big subject, 360 chapters of the Mahabharata, summarized concisely in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. And we've heard some wonderful purports explaining anomalies in the human character and how to overcome them. Beautiful spiritual instructions which we can all take into our daily lives. So we're going to start with text 30, and this is very, starts right out emotional because Bhīṣma is going to pass away. That great soul. Thereupon, that man who spoke on different subjects with thousands of meanings and who fought on thousands of battlefields and protected thousands of men stopped speaking, and, being freed from all bondage, withdrew his mind from everything else and fixed his wide open eyes upon the original personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who stood before him, four-handed, and dressed in yellow garments that glittered and shone. Purport. In the momentous hour of leaving his material body, Bhīṣmadeva set the glorious example concerning the important function of the human form of life. The subject matter which attracts the dying man becomes the beginning of his next life. Therefore, if one is absorbed in thoughts of the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, he is sure to go back home, back to Godhead, without any doubt. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verses 5 and 10. 5 through 10. 5. And whoever, at the time of death, quits his body remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. 6. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. 7. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. 8. He who meditates on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his mind constantly engaged in remembering me, undeviated from the path, he, O Partha, Arjuna, is sure to reach me. 9. One should meditate upon the Supreme Person as the one who knows everything, as he who is the oldest, who is the controller, who is smaller than the smallest, who is the maintainer of everything, who is beyond all material conception, who is inconceivable, and who is always a person. He is luminous like the sun, and he is transcendental, beyond this material nature. And 10. At the time of death, one who fixes his life air between the eyebrows, and by the strength of yoga, with an undeviating mind, engages himself in remembering the Supreme Lord in full devotion, will certainly attain to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sri Bhīṣmadeva attained the perfection of quitting his body at will, and was fortunate enough to have Lord Krishna, the object of his attention, personally present at the time of death. He therefore fixed his open eyes upon him. He wanted to see Sri Krishna for a long time, out of his spontaneous love for him. Because he was a pure devotee, he had very little to do with the detailed performance of yogic principles. simply bhakti yoga is enough to bring about perfection. Therefore, simple bhakti yoga is enough to bring about perfection. Therefore, the ardent desire of Bhīṣmadeva was to see the person of Lord Krishna, the most lovable object, and by the grace of the Lord, Sri Bhīṣmadeva had this opportunity at the last stage of his breathing. Text 31. By pure meditation, looking at Lord Sri Krishna, he was at once freed from all material inauspiciousness and was relieved of all bodily pains caused by the arrow wounds. Thus, all the external activities of his senses at once stopped, and he prayed transcendentally to the controller of all living beings while quitting his material body. Purport. The material body is a gift of the material energy, technically called illusion. Identification with the material body is due to forgetfulness of our relationship with the Lord. For a pure devotee of the Lord, like Bhīṣmadeva, this illusion was at once removed as soon as the Lord arrived. Lord Krishna is like the sun, and the illusory external material energy is like darkness. In the presence of the sun, there is no possibility that darkness can stand. Therefore, just on the arrival of Lord Krishna, all material contamination was completely removed, and Bhīṣmadeva was thus able to be transcendently situated by stopping the activities of the impure senses in collaboration with matter. The soul is originally pure, as are the senses. By material contamination, the senses assume the role of imperfection and impurity. By revival of contact with the Supreme Pure, Lord Krishna, the senses again become freed from material contaminations. Bhīṣmadeva attained all these transcendental conditions prior to his leaving the material body because of the presence of the Lord. The Lord is the controller and benefactor of all living beings. That is the verdict of all Vedas. He is the supreme eternal living entity amongst all the eternal living beings, and He alone provides all necessities for all kinds of living beings. Thus, He provided all facilities to fulfill the transcendental desires of His great devotee, Sri Bhīṣmadeva, who began to pray as follows. 32. Sri Bhīṣma Uvacha. Bhīṣmadeva said, "Let me now invest my thinking, feeling, and willing, which were so long engaged in different subjects and occupational duties, in the all-powerful Lord Sri Krishna. He is always self-satisfied, but sometimes, being the leader of the devotees, he enjoys transcendental pleasure by descending to the material world, although it is from him only that the material world is created." Purport. Because Bhīṣmadeva was a statesman, the head of the Kuru dynasty, a great general, and a leader of Kshatriyas, his mind was strewn over so many subjects, and his thinking, feeling, and willing were engaged in different matters. Now, in order to achieve pure devotional service, he wanted to invest all powers of thinking, feeling, and willing entirely in the Supreme Being, Lord Krishna. He is described herein as the leader of the devotees and all-powerful. Although Lord Krishna is the original personality of Godhead, He Himself descends to earth to bestow upon His pure devotees the boon of devotional service. He descends sometimes as Lord Krishna, and He descends sometimes as Lord Krishna as He is, and sometimes as Lord Chaitanya. Both are leaders of the pure devotees. Pure devotees of the Lord have no desire other than the service of the Lord, and therefore they are called sattvatas. The Lord is the chief amongst such sattvatas. Bhīṣmadeva therefore had no other desires. He was completely free of all material desires. Unless one is purified from all sorts of material desires, the Lord does not become one's leader. Desires cannot be wiped out, but they have only to be purified. It is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita by the Lord himself that he gives his instruction from within the heart of a pure devotee who is constantly engaged in the service of the Lord. Such instruction is given not for any material purpose, but only for going back home, back to Godhead. Bhagavad Gita 10:10. For the ordinary man who wants to lord it over material nature, the Lord only sanctions and becomes a witness of activities, but he never gives the non-devotee instructions for going back to Godhead. That is the difference in dealings by the Lord with different living beings, both the devotee and the non-devotee. He is the leader of all the living beings, as the king of the state rules both the prisoners and the free citizens. But his dealings are different in terms of devotee and non-devotee. Non-devotees never care to take any instruction from the Lord, and therefore the Lord is silent in their case, although he witnesses all their activities and awards them the necessary results, good or bad. The devotees are above this material goodness and badness. They are progressive on the path of transcendence, and therefore they have no desire for anything material. The devotee also knows Sri Krishna as the original Narayana, because Lord Sri Krishna, by his plenary portion, appears as the Karanodakashayi Vishnu, the original source of all material creation. The Lord also desires the association of his pure devotees, and for them only, the Lord descends to the earth and enlivens them. The Lord appears out of his own will. He is not forced by the conditions of material nature. He is therefore described here as the Vibhu, or the Almighty, for he is never conditioned by the laws of material nature. Hare Krishna, Prabhupada ki jai. Text 33. Bhīṣmadeva continues his prayers. Sri Krishna is the intimate friend of Arjuna. He has appeared on this earth in his transcendental body, which resembles the bluish color of the tamal tree. His body attracts everyone in the three planetary systems, upper, middle, and lower. May his glittering yellow dress and his lotus face, covered with paintings of sandalwood pulp, be the object of my attraction, and may I not desire fruitive results. Purport. When Sri Krishna, by his own internal pleasure, appears on earth, he does so by the agency of his internal potency. The attractive features of his transcendental body are desired in all the three worlds, namely the upper, middle, and lower planetary systems. Nowhere in the universe are there such beautiful bodily features as those of Lord Krishna. Therefore, his transcendental body has nothing to do with anything materially created. Arjuna is described here as the conqueror, and Krishna is described as his intimate friend. Bhīṣmadeva on his bed of arrows after the battle of Kurukshetra is remembering the particular dress of Lord Krishna, which he put on as the driver of Arjuna's chariot. While fighting was going on between Arjuna and Bhīṣma, Bhīṣma's attraction was drawn by the glittering dress of Krishna, and indirectly he admired his so-called enemy, Arjuna, for possessing the Lord as his friend. Arjuna was always a conqueror because the Lord was his friend. Bhīṣmadeva takes this opportunity to address the Lord as Vijaya Sakhe, friend of Arjuna, because the Lord is pleased when he is addressed conjointly with his devotees, who are related with him in different transcendental humors. While Krishna was the charioteer of Arjuna, sun rays glittered on the dress of the Lord, and the beautiful hue created by the reflection of such rays was never forgotten by Bhīṣmadeva. As a great fighter, he was relishing the relation with Krishna in the chivalrous humor. Transcendental relation with the Lord in any one of the different rasas, humors, is relishable by the respective devotees. Pardon me. Transcendental relation with the Lord in any one of the different rasas, humors, is relishable by the respective devotees in the highest ecstasy. Less intelligent mundaners who want to make a show of being transcendentally related with the Lord artificially jump up at once to the relation of conjugal love, imitating the damsels of Brajadam. Such a cheap relation with the Lord exhibits only the base mentality of the mundaner, because one who has relished conjugal humor with the Lord cannot be attached to worldly conjugal rasa, which is condemned even by mundane ethics. The eternal relation of a particular soul with the Lord is evolved. The genuine relation of the living being with the Supreme Lord can take any form out of the 5 principal rasas, and it does not make any difference in transcendental degree to the genuine devotee. Bhīṣmadeva is a concrete example of this, and it should be carefully observed how the great general is transcendentally related with the Lord. Text 34. On the battlefield where Sri Krishna attended Arjuna out of friendship, the flowing hair of Lord Krishna turned ashen due to the dust raised by the hooves of the horses. And because of his labor, beads of sweat wetted his face. All these decorations, intensified by the wounds on his skin dealt by my sharp arrows, were enjoyed by him. Let my mind thus go unto Sri Krishna. Purport. The Lord is the absolute form of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. As such, transcendental loving service to the Lord in one of the 5 principal relations, namely Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya, that is, neutrality, servitorship, fraternity, parental affection, and conjugal love, is graciously accepted by the Lord when offered to the Lord in genuine love and affection. Sri Bhīṣmadeva is a great devotee of the Lord in the relation of servitorship. Thus, his throwing of sharp arrows at the transcendental body of the Lord is as good as the worship of another devotee who throws soft roses upon him. It appears that Bhīṣmadeva is repenting the actions he committed against the person of the Lord, but factually, the Lord's body was not at all pained due to his transcendental existence. His body is not matter. Both he himself and his body are complete spiritual identity. Spirit is never pierced, burnt, dried, moistened, and so on. This is vividly explained in the Bhagavad Gita. So also it is stated in the Skanda Purāṇa. It is said there that spirit is always uncontaminated and indestructible. It cannot be distressed, nor can it be dried up. When Lord Vishnu in his incarnation appears before us, he seems to be like one of the conditioned souls, materially encaged, just to bewilder the asuras, or the non-believers, who are always alert to kill the Lord, even from the very beginning of his appearance. Kamsa wanted to kill Krishna, and Ravana wanted to kill Rama, because foolishly they were unaware of the fact that the Lord is never killed, for the spirit is never annihilated. Therefore, Bhīṣmadev's piercing the body of Lord Krishna is a sort of bewildering problem for the non-devotee atheist. But those who are devotees or liberated souls are not bewildered. Bhīṣmadeva appreciated the all-merciful attitude of the Lord. Although he had been disturbed by Bhīṣmadev's sharp arrows, he had not left Arjuna alone, nor was he reluctant to come before Bhīṣma's deathbed, even though he had been ill-treated by him on the battlefield. Bhīṣma's repentance and the Lord's merciful attitude are both unique in this picture. Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, a great acharya and devotee in the humor of conjugal love with the Lord, remarks very saliently in this regard. He says that the wounds created on the body of the Lord by the sharp arrows of Bhīṣmadeva were as pleasing to the Lord as the biting of his fiancée when she bites the body of the Lord directly by a strong sense of sex desire. Such biting by the opposite sex is never taken as a sign of enmity, even if there is a wound on the body. Therefore, the fighting as an exchange of transcendental pleasure between the Lord and his pure devotee, Sri Bhīṣmadeva, was not at all mundane. Besides that, since the Lord's body and the Lord are identical, there was no possibility of wounds in the absolute body. The apparent wounds caused by the sharp arrows are misleading to the common man, but one who has a little absolute knowledge can understand the transcendental exchange in the chivalrous relation. The Lord was perfectly happy with the wounds caused by the sharp arrows of Bhīṣmadeva. The word vibidyamana is significant because the Lord's skin is not different from the Lord. Because our skin is different from our soul. In our case, the word vibidyamana, or being bruised and cut, would have been quite suitable. Transcendental bliss is of different varieties, and the variety of activities in the mundane world is but a perverted reflection of transcendental bliss. Because everything in the mundane world is qualitatively mundane, it is full of inebrieties, whereas in the absolute realm, because everything is of the same absolute nature, there are varieties of enjoyment without inebriety. The Lord enjoyed the wounds created by his great devotee, Bhīṣmadeva, and because Bhīṣmadeva is a devotee in the chivalrous relation, he fixes up his mind on Krishna in that wounded condition. Text 35. In obedience to the command of his friend, Lord Sri Krishna entered the arena of the battlefield of Kurukshetra between the soldiers of Arjuna and Duryodhana. And while there, he shortened the lifespans of the opposite party by his merciful glance. This was done simply by his looking at the enemy. Let my mind be fixed upon that Krishna. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita, 1:21 through 25. Arjuna ordered the infallible Lord Sri Krishna to place his chariot between the phalanxes of the soldiers. He asked him to stay there until he had finished observing the enemies he had to face in the battle. When the Lord was so asked, he at once did so, just like an ordinary carrier. And the Lord pointed out all the important men on the opposite side, saying, "Here is Bhīṣma, here is Drona," and so on. The Lord, being the supreme living being, is never the order supplier or order carrier of anyone, whoever he may be. But out of his causeless mercy and affection for his pure devotees, sometimes he carries out the order of the devotee, like an awaiting servant. By executing the order of a devotee, the Lord becomes pleased, as a father is pleased to carry out the order of his small child. This is possible only out of pure, transcendental love between the Lord and his devotees. And Bhīṣmadeva was quite aware of this fact. He therefore addressed the Lord as the friend of Arjuna. The Lord diminished the duration of life of the opposite party by his merciful glance. It is said that all the fighters who assemble on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attain salvation by personally seeing the Lord at the time of death. Therefore, his diminishing the duration of life of Arjuna's enemy does not mean that he was partial to the cause of Arjuna. Factually, he was merciful to the opposite party because they would not have attained salvation by dying at home in the ordinary course of life. Here was a chance to see the Lord at the time of death and thus attain salvation from material life. Therefore the Lord is all good, and whatever he does is for everyone's good. Apparently it was for the victory of Arjuna, his intimate friend, but factually it was for the good of Arjuna's enemies. Such are the transcendental activities of the Lord, and whoever understands this also gets salvation after quitting this material body. The Lord does no wrong in any circumstance because he is absolute, all good at all times. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada, so poetic, so beautiful. Text 36. When Arjuna was seemingly polluted by ignorance, upon observing the soldiers and commanders before him on the battlefield, the Lord eradicated his ignorance by delivering transcendental knowledge. May his lotus feet always remain the object of my attraction. Purport. The kings and the commanders were to stand in the front of the fighting soldiers. That was the system of actual fighting. The kings and commanders were not so-called presidents or ministers of defense as they are today. They would not stay home while the poor soldiers or mercenaries were fighting face to face. This may be the regulation of modern democracy, but when actual monarchy was prevailing, the monarchs were not cowards, elected without consideration of royal qualification. As it was evident from the battlefield of Kurukshetra, all the executive heads of both parties, like Drona, Bhīṣma, Arjuna, and Duryodhana, were not sleeping. All of them were actual participants in the fighting, which was selected to be executed at a place away from the civil residential quarters. This means that the innocent citizens were immune from all effects of fighting between the rival royal parties. The citizens had no business in seeing what was going to happen during such fighting. They were to pay 1/4 of their income to the ruler, whether he be Arjuna or Duryodhana. All the commanders of the parties on the battlefield of Kurukshetra were standing face to face, and Arjuna saw them with great compassion and lamented that he was to kill his kinsmen on the battlefield for the sake of the empire. He was not at all afraid of the giant military phalanx presented by Duryodhana, but because he was a merciful devotee of the Lord, renunciation of worldly things was natural for him, and thus he decided not to fight for worldly possessions. But this was due to a poor fund of knowledge, and therefore it is said, But this was due to a poor fund of knowledge, and therefore it is said here that his intelligence became polluted. His intelligence could not be polluted at any time because he was a devotee and constant companion of the Lord, as is clear in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna's intelligence became apparently polluted because otherwise there would not have been a chance to deliver the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita for the good of all polluted conditioned souls encaged in material bondage by their misconceptions concerning their relationship with the false material body. The Bhagavad Gita was delivered to the conditioned souls of the world to deliver them from the wrong conception of identifying the body with the soul and to re-establish the soul's eternal relation with the Supreme Lord. Atma Vidya, or transcendental knowledge of himself, was primarily spoken by the Lord for the benefit of all concerned in all parts of the universe. 37. Fulfilling my vow and sacrificing his own promise, he got down from the chariot, took up its wheel, and ran towards me hurriedly, just as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He even dropped his outer garment on the way. Purport. The Battle of Kurukshetra was fought on military principles, but at the same time in a sporting spirit, as a friend fights with another friend. Duryodhana criticized Bhīṣmadeva, alleging that he was reluctant to kill Arjuna because of parental affection. A Kshatriya cannot tolerate insults on the principle of fighting. Bhīṣmadeva therefore promised that the next day he would kill all 5 Pandavas with special weapons made for the purpose. Duryodhana was satisfied, and he kept the arrows with him to be delivered the next day during the fight. By tricks, Arjuna took the arrows from Duryodhana, and Bhīṣmadeva could understand that this was the trick of Lord Krishna. So he took a vow that the next day Krishna would have to take up weapons himself, or his friend Arjuna would die. In the next day's fighting, Bhīṣmadeva fought so violently that both Arjuna and Krishna were in trouble. Arjuna was almost defeated. The situation was so tense that he was about to be killed by Bhīṣmadeva the very next moment. At that time, Lord Krishna wanted to please his devotee Bhīṣma by keeping Bhīṣma's promise, which was more important than his own. Thus, seemingly, he broke his own promise. He had promised before the beginning of the Battle of Kurukshetra that he would remain without weapons and would not use his strength for either of the parties. But to protect Arjuna, he got down from the chariot, took up the wheel of the chariot, and hurriedly rushed at Bhīṣmadeva in an angry mood, just as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He dropped his covering cloth on the way, and out of great anger, he did not know that he had dropped it. Bhīṣmadeva at once gave up his weapons and stood to be killed by Krishna his beloved Lord. The fighting of the day was thus ended at that very moment, and Arjuna was saved. Saved by the bell. Of course, there was no possibility of Arjuna's death because the Lord himself was on the chariot. But because Bhīṣmadeva wanted to see Lord Krishna take up some weapon to save his friend, the Lord created this situation, making Arjuna's death appear imminent. He stood before Bhīṣmadeva to show him that his promise was fulfilled and that he had taken up the wheel. Text 38. And I'm going to end the reading here. I know this is very painful, but on the other hand, it keeps the rest of the prayers for tomorrow, which means we'll have another super ecstatic reading. These prayers of Bhīṣmadeva and Prabhupada's purports are, well, everything he does is out of this world, but this is particularly out of this world. So we'll stop here and we'll start again tomorrow at text 38. Bhīṣmadeva ki jai. Bhīṣma, Bhīṣma, Bhīṣma. Hare Krishna. Okay, so now we have some time for reflections. Please be our guest. Share. This is the nectar of life, to share our realizations and reflections and talk about the pastimes of the Supreme Lord Krishna and his devotees. It's so powerful that even you don't know anything about it, just by hearing it, you become purified. Just as an active medicine will act in the body, even if you don't know what it is or how it works. Hare Krishna.
First is from Sudevi Dasi.
Hare Krishna Sudevi Dasi.
She says, Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Sudevi Dasi. Such a loyal devotee of Srila Prabhupada, so attached to hearing about Krishna. Haribol.
From Rati Manjari.
Haribol Rati.
Jai Guru Maharaj, my good fortune continues.
Hare Krishna, as does ours.
Gopakanya Devi Dasi.
Gopakanya Devi Dasi, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear Maharaj, and all assembled devotees, all glories to Srila Prabhupada and your daily reading service. Jai Ho.
Jai Ho.
From Subbarao Rajagopal.
Subbarao Rajagopal, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances and all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for reading the Grantaraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. What a purport on the art of leaving the body. Engage your mind always in thinking of me, become my devotee, offer obeisances to me, and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. Bhagavad Gita 9:34.
Yes, the most confidential knowledge, repeated both at the end of the 9th chapter and at the end of the 18th chapter, just for our benefit.
From Bhaktarupa.
Haribol Bhaktarupa.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna, Haribol.
Thank you for your answer to yesterday's question. It was amazing how you simply repeated what Krishna said in the Bhagavad Gita about lust, yet it was able to cut through the fog of my condition and illuminated the situation. It made me think about how powerful and vital it is to have the devotee Bhagavat to add their saffron particles to the book Bhagavat and deliver the right medicine at the right time to the suffering patient. I'm really so indebted to you for helping me out so many times. I keep asking these questions, and you so kindly dissipate the fog a little more with each answer. I really don't think I'll ever be able to pay you back, Maharaj. I can only thank you again and again.
Hare Krishna. That was very, very touching. I have nothing to say about that except it's my good fortune. Hare Krishna.
And Rati Manjari?
Yes, Rati.
Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you for this poetic reading of Bhīṣmadeva's prayers. I was wondering about what Bhīṣmadeva's position and activity is in the spiritual world. Is Bhīṣma eternally in the chivalrous servant rasa? And is he also Bhīṣma in the spiritual world? If yes, what do they do there? Are there fights in the spiritual world?
There are, in the Bhagavatamrita, there's descriptions. When Gopakumar went to the abode of liberation, he saw the Vaikuntha Dutas going from the spiritual world to the material world to help the conditioned souls. And when he was waiting at the gateway of Vaikuntha, he saw armies coming out and military leaders coming out. And it doesn't say who they were fighting, or even if they were fighting, but apparently everything is there in the Vaikuntha planets. You don't see military and, soldiers and things like that in Goloka Vrindavan, in Braj, which is a pastoral place. And but yes, in Vaikuntha they do have something, and it's not clear in any of the scriptures exactly what they do. It is clear from the Bhagavatamrita that there are apparent forms of the demons that come in Braj to bother the residents of Braj. But Krishna doesn't kill them, and he doesn't deal with them in the same way as he does while he is here in the material world. These things are mysterious, and they cannot be understood until we become completely pure. Hare Krishna.
From Jai Shri Devi Dasi.
Jai Shri, Hare Krishna, Hare Bol. She just went through an operation. Everybody should give a procedure. Everyone should give their blessings to her and love to her.
Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances and all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Finally got the opportunity to hear the daily readings live. Pray that by your mercy I can follow the footsteps of the great acharyas like Bhīṣmadeva, to remain totally fixed on the Lord despite all difficulties and under any circumstances.
Yes.
Your servant.
Yes, may it be so. May you succeed, Hare Krishna, for all your service you're rendering Srila Prabhupada and his dear Hong Kong Yatra.
Police are coming under...
Nothing happens like that automatically in the machine unless you push the wrong button. Hare Krishna, don't say you don't understand it. Or you might not understand it, but you did something. Okay.
And from Brajaloka.
Yes, Brajaloka, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for today's reading. The verses were very beautiful, and it was so wonderful how Srila Prabhupada unfolded them in his explanations, so that we could understand the depths of the Lord's feelings for his devotees.
Yes, I also noted that with great pleasure. Deep.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada and all glories to your daily readings.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada, and may I always become and stay the peon, just delivering the mail, trying to deliver Prabhupada's words as they are. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
And Nandamurti Devidasi.
Haribol Nandamurti.
Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for today's reading. Today I found the Supreme Lord's mercy for everyone. Krishna is always with everyone and gives mercy especially for the devotee. Krishna is so merciful because Srila Prabhupada explains as below. At that time, Lord Krishna wanted to please his devotee Bhīṣma by keeping Bhīṣma's promise, which was more important than his own.
When I heard that, and I've thought this before, but I've never actually corroborated it with a commentary by our previous acharyas. But you know, a wheel is normally not considered a weapon. So I was thinking that Krishna was so clever that he kept Bhīṣma's promise to take up and fight in the battle. But at the same time, Krishna was so clever that he kept his promise because he didn't actually have an actual weapon in his hand. It was a wheel. Then I was remembering all of the promises that Lord Nrsimhadev, Krishna in the form of Lord Nrsimhadev, had to keep in order to kill Hiranyakashipu, because there were a lot of benedictions that Brahma gave him. But at the same time, you know, Krishna promised in the Gita that my devotee shall never perish. So he used his nails, which were not really considered weapons in a sense, nor ordinarily, and did the deed. So yeah, these pastimes are deep, and every little part of it is deep meaning. Hare Krishna.
From Gauranga Gopal.
Yes, Gauranga Gopal.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for reading these great prayers. I appreciate so much how everything seems to boil down to Krishna's relationships with his devotees. I especially liked how Krishna is described as not being actually touched by Bhīṣma's arrows, and how the pearls of sweat and his wounds only serve to deepen his chivalrous relationship with his dear devotee.
Yes. Giving pleasure both to him and to Bhīṣmadeva. So Krishna can do anything. You know, his body can't be cut. It can't be. It's spiritual, completely spiritual by nature. Just like Bhagavad Gita says, the soul can't be cut by weapons, burned by fire, weathered by the wind, moistened by water. It's completely transcendental to material nature. And Krishna's body is the same, completely transcendental. So Krishna makes the illusion happen so that his devotee is in that mood, is pleased. Inconceivable. Inconceivable. This is unconditional love. Hare Krishna.
Rati Manjari says, thank you, it sounds intriguing.
Yes, Krishna is the most intriguing. He's the supreme intriguer.
Gopal Roy said I skipped his comment, so I'll find it quickly.
Gopal Roy, we skipped his comment.
Looks like it's not on here.
Huh?
I don't see it here. Aside from the comment saying we skipped his comment, I don't see anything else from him.
Well, we apologize, Gopal Roy, if he did skip the comments, but he's looking and he's going. Each comment is scrolling through, but sometimes things happen. Hare Krishna. Did you find it?
Nobody commented. He said I'm worthless, so it doesn't matter.
Gopal, Roy, our hero, the humblest of all humbles. Never disturbed. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Gopal Roy, for being there in Wales and leading that yatra of young men, devotees. Wonderful.
Okay. And there's a question from Vijay Krishna Das.
Vijay Krishna, Hare Krishna.
He says, is it difficult to be a sannyasi?
Is it difficult to be a sannyasi? Well, that depends on who you are. It depends on what your consciousness is. This is a loaded question, as they say. It's a gotcha question. If I say, yes, it's easy, then they can say so many things, maybe. Somebody can say so many things. Oh yes, people take care of you and la, la, la. But to be completely disassociated with woman is not easy for anyone in this material world. Lord Chaitanya said once, if I see the form of a piece of wood carved into a shape of a very attractive young woman, I feel change in my body. So in order to maintain this position, and even at times there are fall downs, but how we respond to the fall downs is the measure of our mettle, spiritual mettle. Yes, it is difficult. At the same time, once we have passed a certain threshold and are not interested in anything else except for spreading Krishna consciousness, because sannyas is for the purpose in the Kali Yuga of only for preaching. There's a verse that says that in the Kali Yuga, different activities are forbidden. One of them is a horse sacrifice, another is a cow sacrifice, another one is impregnating your brother's wife who's been made widow somehow or other, and the other is taking sannyas. But Lord Chaitanya took sannyas, so are we to say that Lord Chaitanya made a mistake? No, Lord Chaitanya couldn't make a mistake. He's Krishna. So it means that we do what we need to do for the preaching, to assist in the preaching, to help the preaching, to amplify the preaching, the spreading of Krishna consciousness. And for that, sannyasis are necessary. And there were so many sannyasis in the Vishnu, in the Vaishnava Sampradaya, before Lord Chaitanya also. Hare Krishna. I don't know if that answers his question or not.
From Gauranga Gopal.
Gauranga Gopal, our hero, Haribol.
He says, also impressive how Bhīṣmadeva could concentrate on the beautiful form of Krishna, although having so many other subjects of thinking, feeling, and willing, given his position as a great statesman. Such a powerful personality.
Yes, and if you remember right, in the verses itself, it said at one point, Bhīṣma voluntarily withdrew all of those things. That made him even greater. He withdrew all those thoughts, and he only fixed his mind on Krishna. And then it says that the pain was removed. This was Krishna's unlimited mercy on Bhīṣmadeva. Hare Krishna.
And this is Gopal Roy's comment.
Oh, you found it?
Yeah, he just put it in again, I think. Re-entered.
Okay.
He said, Dear Maharaj, I really liked the comparison of Bhishma's arrows to the loving biting of a fiancé. How the Lord engages in such loving relationships with his devotees is so attractive. Also the contrast between the qualifications of great kings in the past and the cowardly leaders of today.
Oh, yes.
Who not only hide behind closed doors but also mock the general public by enforcing restrictions on them while the leaders themselves abuse such rules.
Oh, he's getting coming to the point.
I would also like to add, again, my appreciation of you reading every evening. I am witnessing devotees like Bhakta Ali, Bhakta Rupa, Daityari Hari, Gauranga Gopal, Santa Rupa, and others becoming steady, enthusiastic, and blissful by listening to these careful and systematic readings of Srila Prabhupada's books every day.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
We all owe you so much. Hopefully we can pay you another visit soon and soak up the nectar even more by being live in the studio audience.
Hare Krishna, we hope so. Sooner the better.
And from Daityari Hari.
Haribo Daityari Hari.
He says, Hare Krishna Maharaj, thanks for another wonderful reading. Really nice how Krishna is only conquered by the love of his devotees. We read tonight how he broke his own vow to honor the vow of Bhishma out of love. Is this one of the features of Krishna that makes him superior to Ramachandra? He seems to act adharmically on certain occasions because of his unbounded love for his pure devotees, whereas Rama often seems to follow Dharma strictly under all circumstances. Is this a fair observation?
It may be mundanely fair, but it's not true. There's no difference between Ramachandra and Krishna. Ramachandra is Krishna, but he's choosing not to exhibit all of his qualities, all of his opulences, whereas Krishna exhibits all of the opulences of the Supreme Person, and therefore he's beyond the laws of material nature completely, whereas Ramachandra came to show what it's like to be a perfect human being, a perfect king, and therefore he was bound by that mission to do things that were strictly according to Dharma, even to the point of banishing Sita at the end because of some rumor that he heard from the populace. So I wouldn't say one is superior to the other because they're the same person, but I would say that Krishna exhibits his full glory in his form as Krishna. Hare Krishna. And therefore he's most difficult to understand. So therefore in India, Rama is even more popular than Krishna. Hare Krishna.
And from Bhakta Rupa.
Jai Bhakta Rupa.
It was really amazing to hear how Krishna relished his fighting exchange with Bhishma. Bhishma's arrows are like offerings of flowers. Krishna is the ultimate enjoyer in all circumstances. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Very nice realization.
And from another question from Vijay Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Vijay Krishna.
He says,
This is the last question.
Why is it that chanting Hare Krishna is considered as the topmost form of meditation?
You don't know? The mantra, the Maha Mantra, is called the Maha Mantra in the Upanishads because it is the greatest mantra. That's one level of the answer. Another level of the answer is that it is made up of names of Radha and Krishna. So, therefore, it is the topmost mantra and it is the highest mantra. Because why? Because all of the forms of the Lord are within the form of Krishna. All the forms of the energy of the Lord are in the form of Srimati Radharani. And all of the potencies of all the mantras and other spiritual disciplines are contained within the sound of Krishna's name. Namachintamina Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Shuddho Nityamukta Vinatmam Nama Namino. The holy name of Krishna is not different than Krishna. Krishna is the all-powerful Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the Hare Krishna mantra is the all-powerful Supreme Personality of Godhead. Also, non-different. Vinatmam Nama Namino. Hare Krishna. We thank you for all of your reflections. They were beautiful, and they're getting more and more beautiful naturally, because the Lord's pastimes are becoming more and more deeper and deeper, not just because we're going deeper in the Bhagavatam, but because we're hearing them again and again. And this is the secret, to hear the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, and Chaitanya Charitamrita again and again for the rest of our lives. And then we will be able to think of Krishna at the time of death, just as Bhīṣma did. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. See you tomorrow night, same time, same place, same topic, as Bhīṣma continues to enlighten us. See you tomorrow. Hare Krishna.